Hey everybody, Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for Gamingtrend.com. Today we're going to check out my favorite thing, big boxes. And inside that big box is the Qidi Q2. Now I learned my lesson, it is pronounced Qidi. That is the correct pronunciation. I said Qidi X4 and you guys certainly gave me a whole lot of grief for it and I appreciate it. So the Qidi Q2 is a brand new printer from that company and it's not the only surprise I have today. But let's first unbox this thing, get it assembled, and we'll see what happens at the end of this video. Inside the box, obviously you have the printer itself. I'll go ahead and close that up for now. Slide this aside, as well as two boxes named Toolbox, this HD screen. This would be for your spool of filament, a USB thumb drive, this glass top, which would be, if I don't break it, this glass top, which you'd put up here for sealing off the new heated chamber. This is a completely redesigned heated chamber for this new printer. And that's going to allow you to do PLA, TPU, a number of more complex filaments that might require a bit more temperature control. And then obviously a quick start guide that will teach you how to get everything assembled. So if you watched my X4 unboxing and assembly video, then you know that the setup is about as simple as you could possibly make it. Most of it actually happens on the screen. So we're going to do that same exact thing. We're going to follow the quick start guide, but I'm going to tell you that one of the very first things it's going to ask you to do, which here's an installation step for the monitor, one of the first things it's going to tell you to do is to hook up the screen, because that screen is going to guide you through the rest of the setup. So the first thing it's going to show you is all of the parts, which we're going to go over as we continue to unbox this. User manual, all the various parts of the device itself. I think you can see that. There we go. Now you can see it on camera. So all the various components, all the pieces that are inside. It's going to tell you what size of keys you're going to need for adjustments. We'll talk about adjustments in a little bit. How to unlock the platform, how to load filament. Here's a nice chart that teaches you how to use the dry box portion of this. Yes, this can dry filaments, which is fantastic. You don't need a secondary device to do that. And even how to get your first print, which it's going to give you a benchy. How boring. So the very first step here is to finish unboxing it. And really that's going to be about cutting the rest of the pieces loose and getting everything else out of the box. As I mentioned, it does have everything you need. So here's some wrenches, here's a fuse, an extra hot end, a wrench, some Allen keys. All of that's going to be useful later on. And then the second box has some PLA Rapid Black. Not enough to really do much with. I don't even know if you can get a benchy out of this. Power cord, we're going to need that. A scraper. The other portion of the tension handle for, we're just going to put it on. This slides on like so. And now I have where the filament's going to hang. Not quite sure about this though. I'll have to look that up. Oh, actually, yeah, I am. So this is going to provide some tension relief as the filament comes down here. This is going to allow it to not bind up. That's a really smart add-on. I'm going to look and see if I can find something to print and create this for my X4. That sounds pretty slick. All right, we'll set that aside. And a screwdriver. So nothing too crazy. If you're thinking, wow, there's really not a whole lot to assemble, well, you're right. Looking in the manual, as expected, the very first thing it tells you to do is install the display screen, because that's going to guide you through the rest of this setup process. It is a really simple screen. This is a 4.1 inch screen, I believe. USB-A and then a ribbon cable inside here, and you'll see that there's a small foam relief there to make sure that the cable doesn't get pinched as you move this screen to make sure that there's no glare. And there's a small little tension screw there so you can get the thing in place and kind of lock it there. So pretty simple. It kind of hangs and plugs in. So let's do exactly that and we'll move on. And you'll probably have an easier time with this because you're not having to do it on camera. And I think I'm probably going to go get some snips instead of trying to use a knife, just for safety's sake. Headed inside, you can see that the print head is encased in a box of cardboard, and we have a number of things that need to get handled before we get started. Down here there are some screws that need to be removed. There's 4 of them. And then there's also some foam underneath the print bed. So we'll get started with this box up here. I am not afraid to say that my wife is the mechanical one in this family. The wood shop belongs to her. So I went and grabbed some nippers that are older than time, but they're safer than trying to cut this with a knife, provided they're sharp enough to do the job. I think it's time for me to head over to someplace like Harbor Freight or something and get my wife some new nippers. These things are awful, but good enough for today. Next up, we've got another belt lockdown tie over here, so we'll remove that. Make sure to remove that from editing. That frees this arm and this belt. That should clear up all of that. The next thing we need to remove are the screws that I mentioned. For that, you're going to need, it says screws, but these are actually what you need those Allen wrenches for. If at all possible, try not to bump into that worm gear that is covered in grease, and you want it to be that way. Now, I'm one of those guys who likes to save the boxes to things. This is something you're definitely going to want to keep. If you ever need to move this printer, you're going to want to lock the bed down, and that's what these are for. So my suggestion is to throw them back into the bag where the Allen wrenches live and keep them should you ever need to move. I'm not saying you have to keep the entire box for this printer, but you might be wise to keep these screws. But I'm not your dad, so do whatever you want. The next step is to plug it in. He uses a standard plug, so if you needed something longer, you can do that. Just keep the voltage in mind. But that's it. Time to power it up and head back to the screen. See the integrated lights coming on. They have upgraded these lights, so they are quite a bit brighter than they were before. We are at the first setup screen. So I'm going to close this, get out of the way. Gave me the same instructions that the book gave me, which is to remove the box on top here, pull everything out. If there's no box, please proceed to the next step. Obviously, there's no box. We went ahead and removed the screws as well, and there is no top protective cover yet. So, we're good there. Next, remove the screws from the fixed platform and remove the box fixture. So that's going to be, well, There is no box, proceed to the next step. Well, we removed the 4 screws, but again, there's no box. So what's next? Next is next. Unscrew the screws from the fixed platform. Now we're talking. That's what we needed to do. All 4 screws are removed. We click next. Confirm whether to remove the screws. Yes, we did. Confirm. That's what's going to cause that bed to raise. And we see that happening right now. That's going to give us access to this foam support underneath. If you're saving the box type, that's another thing you might want to save because it's going to protect that hot plate from moving should you need to move. All right, that's done. Unlocking the print head. Unpack the print head. We did that. Remove the rail protected cotton. We did that too. Next, machine self-test and input shaping are about to be performed. Please ensure that the platform is unlocked and there's no debris at the bottom of the platform and the machine. There is not. Confirm. Here's your post-test. So it's now testing the extruder, the heater bed, the chamber itself. This is a heated chamber. I'm going to go ahead and close this so it can heat a little bit faster. It's heating up to 45 degrees centigrade, which now that it's going, you can see that that's moving pretty quick, even though this is open on top. That's something that I saw on my X4 is it heats remarkably fast. It's testing the fans. It's got those 2 fans on the side, and it's also got an activated chamber circulation fan in the back. That's where you can pull that plate out and you can put in activated carbon. So if you're concerned about either the smell or you're concerned about what sort of materials it might be putting in the air, that's where you're going to put in that activated carbon, and that's going to keep, at least, mostly keep your print smelling fine. I wouldn't say it's pleasant, but it's certainly better than if you don't put it in there. So there's the circulating fan, that's the one I just mentioned, and the auxiliary fans, those are the ones that are on the side. And that, I believe, should finish up in just a second. Self-check result, no abnormalities found, fantastic. Auto leveling in progress. If you've ever owned an older 3D printer, you know how painful it is to level some of them. They're not all bad, but some of them are terrible. And thankfully, we've reached the age now where auto leveling is very much a thing. You can see here the plate is moving up and down and starting to adjust, and figures the second I do that with the camera, we see the print head start to move into place. And I know it seems like it bangs. That's an unpleasant sound. It sounds like it bangs against the glass. It's not. It's moving against the stops. I promise you that's okay. I don't know what this sound is though. That's kind of concerning. Hopefully that goes away after this first test. I'm really not sure what that is. Place. And I know it seems like it bangs. That's an unpleasant sound. It sounds like it bangs against the glass. It's not. It's moving against the stops. I promise you that's okay. I don't know what this sound is though. That's kind of concerning. Hopefully that goes away after this first test. I'm really not sure what that is. Oh, okay, now I know what it was. That was, that was the tube was getting stuck in the fan. Let's not let that happen. We'll move that out of the way. All right, so now the print has moved all the way to the back. And you might see a little black riser there. Let me open this up so you can see a little more clearly. That black riser all the way in the back. What that is, that's a kind of a scrape plate, if you will. There's a small gray plate that's got a kind of a textured surface, and then there's that other secondary plate over on the side. And what that is, when you're printing and it needs to extrude some and then knock the extruded filament loose so it can make a clean first pass, it's going to come up there and it's going to basically rub and clean off that nozzle, and then it's going to knock it against the back of that and clean it off completely. Don't be alarmed by that. If you've never used a printer before, that is normal. It may sound loud. That is normal. Do not stress. When we get to the kind of goodie that we're going to share at the very end, we might see that a few more times. While it's doing its auto leveling, there's something else I brought with me that I wanted to show you. You can see here on the bed that it's 270 by 270 by 256 millimeters cubed. And that is the width, the depth, and the height. So it's going to print up to 270 millimeters high, 270 millimeters across, and 270 by 270 by 256 up. By comparison, let's just say a competitor, I'm going to keep it vague, a competitor has a similar plate, but theirs is 256 by 256 by 256 cubed. So we're already bigger than, let's just call it the most popular competitor out there with the cheapest possible printer in this class. By comparison, the big boy here. Oh, that tube is in the way again. We're going to move that again. Till I get that in there, I don't want it to fall inside. This is from the X4. You can see that's 310 by 310 by 310. So it is a much bigger plate. I will put them on top of each other so you can see. I say much bigger, but it's not a great deal bigger. 270 by 270 is still a very respectable size. You're not going to get a full-size helmet out of this size, but you will be able to split it in half. And that right there is pretty impressive, given that Qidi is saying that this is their new entry-level printer. Think about that for a second. An entry-level printer that's almost capable of printing a full-size helmet and can definitely do it in 2 slices. Amazing. You can see now that it says waiting for Klipper to restart, and that is a quick reminder that this does run on the open source Klipper platform. So if you're concerned about closed platform printing, Qidi is not doing that. They're running on a fairly stock version of Klipper, so that's going to give you a lot of opportunities. If you like to tinker, you have the opportunity. If you don't, you can simply use the firmware that they're pushing, which is going to be pretty close to the most recent stable version of Klipper. And frankly, there's a reason why these are absolutely rock solid printers, and I think that using that open source version of Klipper is a big part of it. Now what you're seeing here, you see that's just shaking like crazy. Why would it do that? What is it doing? That's input shaping. When you think about how fast a modern printer can go, the last thing you want is vibration to throw it off. So what it's doing now is it's basically testing how much vibration it's going to incur at different speeds, and it's basically keeping track and creating a database so it can compensate. The idea is that this is going to print at a very high rate of speed without shaking the entire table. I'll spare you the science, but basically think of kind of 2 objects kind of counter-rotating like this, and you're getting the idea of what it's trying to accomplish without shaking the entire table. I'd be happy to know that all of what you just saw only has to happen once. You don't need to do this leveling, and you don't need to do the input shaping unless something changes. Congratulations, the guidance has been completed, finished, we're done. Well, mostly. What you're missing now is the latest firmware updates. So we're going to go ahead and connect to my network, which it does via Wi-Fi or wired or LAN only. So you can see you have a couple of options. It's nice that they included Wi-Fi. They could have easily skimped on that to make it a cheaper printer. They did not. So we're going to go ahead and turn on Wi-Fi. It's going to scan. Say hello to my neighbor's Wi-Fi. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in my Wi-Fi password, which I'm not going to share with you. It's now connecting to my Wi-Fi, which is great. And it's now successfully connected. It should immediately say, do you have a firmware update? If not, it says we're at 1.0.4. I'm going to go ahead and tell it online update. Hey, look at that, we're already on the latest version. It may be because this just came out, or I should say it's almost out. It's not quite out yet, but we're good. Klipper, firmware, should you need to reboot that. If you need to do support, this is where you're going to find system logs, but the rest is good to go. We're going to change this to Central Standard Time, which is where I am. Screen off. I'm going to tell it after 15 minutes, go to sleep. Always do time lapse, pop-up reminder. After sale, should you need support and you need to get a hold of Qidi, there you go. It's going to be Q2 support at Qidi3D.com or Q2 AMS at Qidi3D.com. Wait a minute, AMS? Here's the included local files. We have a 3D Benchy. We have a couple of different presets that you can do. If you want to print another shaft for extending this, which we'll get back to in a minute, there's the other portion of it. You can see that you can effectively just reprint this. So if this wears out or you want another one, there you go. This would be a torture test, they call it, and it's basically going to test exactly how close your tolerances are. I've never found a whole lot of purpose in those. This is your elevation test. Here's your Voron cube. So you've got a number of goodies there, and then obviously USB. When we get a USB device connected, here's your command and control for this device. So if we wanted to move this down 10, movement can only start after homing. We're going to go ahead and tell it to home. Here's where you're going to heat the bed, heat the nozzle, etc., etc. Here's where you're going to load filament. Hey, look at that. Huh, weird. Another AMS reference. It's almost like maybe there's more to this thing than meets the eye. Turning on your cooling fan, aux fan, chamber circulation fan. All those controls can be handled manually. And then obviously this is your main screen. When you're printing, you'll have the picture of whatever you're printing here. I guess I probably should show you the back of this thing because that is also another area where Qidi has done a ton of work that makes this a cut above the rest. As I mentioned when I did my X4 review, adjusting this thing is incredibly easy. You have the belt tensioning right here on the back, and you can see the screws are right there. I should say the Allen key wrench. The Allen screws are there, and you can use the included Allen wrenches to adjust that, and that's going to give you your belt tensioning right there. Really easy to access. I very much appreciate that. Same thing with your vents here. You have this opening. I've already seen a number of things that you can print, and there's already pre-drilled screw holes to attach. So if you have some sort of external venting system, you can hook it here to siphon the air away from the device itself, or obviously you can 3D print your own things to put various different fan attachments on here. Just be mindful that you don't want to cause any restrictions and you're not trying to cause additional stress on the device. So maybe something that suctions, probably not a great idea, but something that can move air away, that might be a better thing. Over here we have where you're going to attach this. And as I mentioned, this seems to be like a little tensioner for you to run your tubing through, I should say your filament through, so it can easily move. And it really just slides on like so. I do like that they've moved this to the side. That's appreciated. So just like that. Just like that, he says. 3, 2, 1. So we're gonna go ahead and slide this in just like that. Takes a little bit of pressure, it locks in place. And now you have your filament on the side with this little tensioner. So you can run this right into this right here. And now that'll run right into the filament loading system that's up here. I know that this is something I'd like for my X4 because this tube here is kind of just cut right here and it does split. So this is going to remove that tension and allow this to more freely accept the filament in there and not put pressure here. So that's a cool improvement. Here you have the waste chute. So obviously this is where that's going to come out. I 3D printed something that also routes this out to the side. You know, you're welcome to put whatever you like. Down here, a little further down, you can see there is an RJ45. They included some Ethernet for you. So if you are inclined to hook this up to your print farm and you're interested in connecting it with a LAN cable, well, there you go. Or obviously we just use this with Wi-Fi. That's always an option. All right, we've probably hinted at this long enough. The other goodie we're going to take a look at today is this, the Qidi box. And this Qidi box is their AMS that's going to stack on top of this Q2. We're going to use that to do some 4-color printing. I've got a nice little goodie to share with you. I figured I'd pick something gaming related. Kind of fits, you know, we are a Gamingtrend. So we're going to go ahead and get this set up, and then we're going to do our first test print. I'm going to skip a benchy. Why? I just don't print them. I do want to give you one stat though. One stat that will blow your mind. The X4, I picked it up for a very specific reason. I'm building a full-size Space Marine armor set. I say full-size, human size, maybe slightly bigger. I'm not going the full Astarte size. I'm not printing an 8-foot armor set for my very first armor set. But what I will tell you is this. I put the X4 to work. How much to work? Almost 900 hours straight. I didn't adjust a belt. I didn't have a single failure. Not one, hand to God, 0 failures from start to finish. Now, that's not to say that there weren't imperfections. There were obviously, that's just the nature of 3D printing. That means sometimes maybe a seam didn't perfectly line up when I had to split things up, but let's call it 99% of the time, everything lined up perfectly. I'll show you some pictures throughout this video. As I do setup, I'm just gonna kind of pop them in and you'll be able to see how that's going. But just know that all of that was printed on the X4, minus the ones that you see in black, and that was printed on that competitor's printer because I didn't have this. If this thing is half as reliable as the X4, which I have no reason to believe that it won't be, this is going to be an amazing first printer for somebody. If this is their new entry level, and that X4 is any example whatsoever, wow, we have come a long way in filament 3D printing. I'm going to give you some inside baseball. It's about 2 in the morning, and I'm tired. So expect to see a different shirt, probably, you know, slightly different lighting. It's hard to get lighting dialed in exactly the same, but we're going to set this up tomorrow. So one of those clocky thingies where we jump ahead in time and I'll look slightly less tired. Be right back. Welcome back. Time to unbox the Qidi box. That is the AMS for this device. Obviously this will work on any of their printers that support an AMS, but this particular one is set up right out of the box. Went ahead and removed the printer just to make it easier to see what's inside the box. One of the first things that I like is that everything is labeled. There is no ambiguity what goes where, what it's for, how it's placed in the device. Everything is marked. And if you need a little bit more guidance there's a QR code on the back of the device that will walk you through in video form exactly how to get this connected to your new Qidi printer. Inside you see there are rollers with kind of a textured edge to it to keep your filament rollers moving, and then the selected type of material is going to go through these holes and out into the back of the printer, which we'll go over in just a moment. The way that this is powered, it has an external power cable. You saw that right here. So this is not going to connect to your printer for power. It's going to get its own power. But other than that, there's a couple of cables to connect and you're done. The only thing you need now is to pick what you're going to print, get yourself the files, and load it with filament. They say go with what you know. And I know that I've had 900 hours of successful prints on Sunlu's rapid filament. Their PLA has been incredibly successful, and the results, you can't argue that they don't look amazing. So we're going to stick with that. Sunlu is not a sponsor for this, so don't get that in your head. This is just a personal choice. I know that I've had incredible success with their rapid PLA, so why mess with a good thing? I'm going to be printing the Super Mario Piranha plant from the Super Mario series. So I've picked up pink for the tongue, red, white, I've got green, I've got 2 shades of brown for the pot. So that's going to give me more than the 4 colors I can put here. That's going to give me an opportunity to check how easy it is to swap out filament here. So let's go ahead and get this connected to the printer, and then when we finally reach that point, we'll load this into the machine and we should be off to the races. I flipped the printers around so you can see more clearly what I'm trying to accomplish. The first thing I'm going to do is turn off power. So I've done that, the machine's not powered up, and obviously we don't have power to the AMS. You don't want power on while you're doing any of this stuff. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the cover for the print head. That hot end has to come out. We're going to swap it for this one, and obviously to do that you don't want power on and you need access to it. So we've accomplished those first 2 tasks, as you can see. The next thing we're going to do is remove that hot end. One pointless disassembly later. Before we go too much further, I do want to point out that the instructions are very much geared towards retrofitting an X4. So it does come with the X4 accessory kit. This is the new extruder that you would need to install on your X4 to be able to use an AMS, but that's included with this box. So if you're buying this box, just know that right out of the gate. The Q2, on the other hand, is ready to go. It doesn't require any sort of retrofitting whatsoever, but I went ahead and removed the case on the front of the extruder so you can see what that looks like anyway. If you are doing this on an X4, it really is as simple as pulling off 2 screws, pulling this wire here, removing this PFTE tube, and then swapping this in. It's that simple. It's not any sort of complex surgery. You can do that even if you have no experience whatsoever doing it. It's really that easy. Back to the instructions. We're going to skip over the part about taking out the extruder and connecting the cables. Install the front cover of the tool head. We did that, or we will do that right now. You've seen what it looks like. Without further ado, just go ahead and pop that on, piece of cake. Peel the tape off the leverage sticker and paste it on the head of the lever. So that's going to be... What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Funny enough, you can actually skip the rest of the instructions because you're done inside of here anyway. They say you can turn power back on. I'm not going to do that until I have everything connected. So we're going to go on to connecting the filament outlet as well as the box hub, which is this device right here. So that's going to take all 4 of your inputs and provide it as an output. So let's move on to that section. That's going to be a lot of cable routing and a lot of tube routing. So we'll kind of do some fast-forwardy stuff, and you'll just kind of see the results of that tube routing. Tube routing, not that exciting to watch. Now obviously this device needs to communicate with the printer, and it says to do that via the USB port. But wait, where is the USB port? On the X4, it's back here, or this side. Either way, it's in the back. On the Q2, they've moved that all the way up to the front, and that's in front of the monitor. Certainly you're not going to route a cable all the way up here, right? Well, that's right. Instead, they've given you cables, and that 8-pin adapter is down here. So we're going to be routing a cable from here instead of using this USB adapter. So if you open this up and you're kind of confused, realize that they may not have updated the instructions for Q2 yet. You're simply using a cable. Just a quick note, because this is a pre-production unit, I have kind of pre-production instructions. So as a result, I'm kind of having to figure out some stuff on the fly. By the time you get your hands on this, all of this will be updated, but you can also watch this video, of course, to walk you through how to get through all of it. One of the things that it tells you to do is to put this on the back of this unit. And if I were to do so, it would actually block the waste chute. What they actually want you to do is disassemble this. Pull this off, and this will simply mount here. You can see there's a spot for it right there. That is where it's supposed to go. So if you find yourself getting stuck and you're not sure why that's set up that way, this would be great for the X4, but it's not the right place for the Q2. So I've gone ahead and pulled that, and I'm going to go ahead and mount it, and then we'll move on with getting the tubing in place and getting it set up for that first print. I also need to make sure that the firmware is up to date on this, and then we can start to dry some filament and get to that very first print. As you can see, I've got it mounted now, and I just dropped that PFT tube right in there. And now it's time to put the rest of the power connector, interface cable, and then also get the rest of the 4 tubes connected. So I'm gonna get those out of the bag, so no crinkling sound for you. And then we'll get those connected and start to run it to the Qidi box. To put this on top of this device, you're gonna need the glass. So first off, let's do that. Now we've got the glass ready to go, and I've already marked it up with a bunch of fingerprints. Off to a great start. So first things first, that's gonna go on top here. It's gonna sit, there's a little soft spot that it can sit in. I'm gonna face it the correct way this time. There's a soft padded spot for it to sit in, kind of a channel for it to lay in. And then there's little feet here to lock it in place on top. This is what you're gonna need to do to put this on top, otherwise it's gonna fall right into the printer. But here's the secret, you don't have to. This can be located anywhere. As long as there's no stress on the tubes, this can be sitting wherever. So if you want it to sit somewhere not on the printer, that's perfectly fine. You can have it sitting on top of the glass, you can have it sitting to the right or left of your printer, you can have it sitting on a shelf. Wherever you need this to be to make sure that you don't have vibration or any sort of issues with feeding of filaments, whatever you need to do, just make sure that you have a clear path for the tubing to be able to reach without any harsh bends. So in this case, just because that's the way it's typically shown, I'm going to put this on top and we'll finish up the rest of the tubing and the wiring. The next wire is going to be this hub interface cable. And that is another 8-pin connector. That's going to go right here in the back of the AMS. And you can see there's a special type of cable wire here. It can only go in one place and it can only go in one orientation, so you can't mess this up at all. Just make sure it's fully seated and you're good to go. There we go. So now we've got these set up where they can talk to each other. When I have this in its permanent position, I'm probably going to put some tubing around this, like a little bit of a cable organizer, and probably lock it like this, so that way it stays nice and clean and everything stays away from each other. So obviously, don't put any more tension on these than you have to, but yeah, we're all set for connectivity. The next thing we're going to do is get those tubes ran. There's also a cable comb. It's really all that I can really think of how to call this. They call it a PTFE tube buckle, and you can see they're referring to it here. The idea is to keep all of the tubes away from each other. I don't know that it's entirely necessary for this, but we're going to do it anyway. The idea here is that these are going to snap into these little spots here. And it's going to keep all the tubes away from each other. I'm not entirely sure as well whether or not it matters the order in which you put these in. Like, is this 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a 1, 2, 3, 4 over here? They're not labeled, so I'm thinking not. It's probably more just keeping track of what goes where. But now we've got this, again, I would call it kind of a cable comb. If you've ever done wiring on a PC, it's like this. They include 2, so if you really want to keep these away from each other a little further, you could do that by putting one like maybe down here to keep things away from each other. This is not something that I would wrap up like this. I'm going to keep it loose like this on purpose because I want things to be very loose. I want the cabling to move very smoothly. But we're done. That's completely connected and ready to go. The last thing we need to do is get some filament loaded in here, power everything up, update the firmware, and we'll be ready to print. To finish up that last bit, I want to get this into the lab. So I'm going to go ahead and get this collected, cleaned up, and into its final position. And then I'm going to get this connected with Ethernet, and we can start to get the firmware updated. There's also one piece that I did miss. Inside the dryer portion of the Qidi box, there are 2 desiccant packages. I need to remove those so I can get airflow into the device. You don't want those sitting in there. So don't forget to do that. There are 2 desiccant packages. They're on the left and right behind those little vents. Make sure you get those so you can get the drying to work properly on this device. So we'll get that done. We'll get it to its final spot, and then we can start to go through the update process. The device is all booted up. And as you can see, it detects the box. Sorry if that got a little blurry there. It detects the box. The box itself is showing dots that are blinking, LEDs telling me no filament's loaded, which makes sense because there's, see if you can follow this, no filament loaded. So we need to load the firmware. Since this is pre-release code, this might not update over the air quite yet. I suspect this will update over the air like normal in the future, but for now we can see that it at least detects the box and it shows I've got filaments A, B, C, and D. I've got set for PLA currently. You can see what type: PLA matte, metal, silk, CF, wood, basic, matte basic, ABS, ABS GF, ABS metal, ABS odorless. This keeps going for a while. This can handle a number of different materials, including ones that I've never seen on any other AMS that I've researched. We're doing just basic PLA today. And then you can set the color. So depending on what type of color you're using, you're going to want to set it here. That way it knows what type of color you're using, and you're going to do that on each one to tell it what type of filament you're loading there, and you can keep track of what colors. There's also something that people don't really realize, or at least pay attention to. If you're doing this monochromatic, which is to say you're just doing one color, you can load 4 of the same colors here and simply use this as a way to quadruple the amount of material that you're able to load at any one time. Realize also that this says box 1. You can load multiple boxes, not just 2. You can go up to 16 colors. So realize that this does have the ability to chain if you wanted to have a really large set of colors that you could load into this system. So don't feel like you just have to do 4 or just have to do 2 boxes. You can keep going. You can see that it's also starting to figure out the relative humidity. That's what RH stands for here. We've also got what you want to heat this to. So it can go up to 65°C to keep your filament nice and warm, and also reduce the amount of relative humidity to that filament. So this has a number of features that will probably come in very handy. It kind of skips needing a separate dryer, and it also, again, quadruples the amount of filament you can have. So these are pretty handy. Next up, we're going to do offline update. It detected the update file, which is on the thumb drive here. We'll hit confirm, and we'll let it do its thing. It was specific in the offline update that the Qidi box be offline. Sorry, Qidi box. And it is in fact turned off, so this update shouldn't take too long. Again, as I mentioned, this is a pre-release update, so future updates probably will come via the regular update method, which is online. For my X4, which is sitting right next to it, I've not had any problems with getting updates offline, so I suspect this will be a similar situation with the Q2. While it's doing that, I will do a quick backup and show you. That's the X4, and that is the Q2. You can see there's really not a huge difference, at least in size. As I mentioned before, the X4 is 305 by 305 by 280. That is width, depth, and height. And I need to clean it. Versus over here, you have the Q2, which is 270 by 270 by 256. Again, width, depth, height. Not a massive difference. All right, it says the update is complete. Please manually restart the machine, which means power it off with the power back here. And we're going to do exactly that by reaching around the back and giving the power the boot. Just gotta remember which side it's on. There we go. I found it. Powered down. Powering back up. And I'm going to go ahead and power up the Qidi box as well, considering both should be patched. And I'm going to pull the USB, because we're not booting from that. You should be booting from the new firmware. The lights come on. Update success. The new version has been successfully installed. Please perform input shaping again before using the machine. That's always a good idea. Anytime you do an update, you should go through the shaping process again. But we do see that it is detecting the box once again, so we are off to the races. We're going to go ahead and perform that input shaping. I'm a little OCD about it. I'm also going to perform the auto leveling, calibration, all of this stuff. So I tend to go a little bit overboard, but we're going to go ahead and perform that input shaping. That's the kind of vibration shaping that we saw earlier when we did the initial setup. We'll go ahead and let that do its thing, and we'll be right back. As you can see, we have the white loaded. Now we're going to load the red. Now, if you've never done this before, this might come as a shock. But not to worry. It's simply loading it up. And we should see it synchronize up here. When it's done, we shall see. right, I'm gonna make the adjustment here. Color is red. Confirm. And we're gonna adjust the extruder temp and the box temp, but I'm gonna do that on the software for the file itself. This is also not PLA, it is PETG. So make sure that you catch this. Not basic, this is just PETG. And you're gonna wanna make this adjustment based off of the filament type. So in this case, 220 to 270, that's actually pretty good. I'm gonna say generic PETG because it's not Qidi. And in this case, I believe the rest is all correct. But you're gonna make those adjustments in the slicer anyway. We'll confirm that. This is not PLA either. This is also PETG. Figured I'd start with the hard mode. Generic, confirm. Rack, I'm not sure what rack is. So I'm gonna have to look that up because again, this is kind of new to me. I'm not sure what rack plus the 4 are. This last one is gonna be black, but thanks Amazon, you let me down on this one. I'm gonna have to go ahead and order it and get it in tomorrow. The one that was on its way canceled. Might be a challenge to see, but you can also see that it has fed through that rear unit there. And you can see, well, it's kind of hard to see, but that's white and that's red. When we get black, that'll feed through one of the other 2 tubes, and we'll see that come through as well. I did mention this is able to do filament drying, so we're going to go ahead and set this to do PETG, which is what's in there. We're going to hit start. Please remove the store as filament as shown, which we've done that. The box will automatically rotate to the filament storage slot, and we simply hit start, and it's going to go ahead and start drying. Now I've already got this loaded for printing, and I don't actually need it in this case, but if you did need filament drying, you'd be able to do that right here. Unload and then start. Just make sure that you've got the, as you can see, you've got the filament locked in place so that way it can rotate. You can't obviously have it loaded and ready to print while it's drying because it does need to rotate, and that's not going to work if you have the filament already preloaded and ready to print. Pretty easy though. I've gotten to spend a lot more time with the Qidi Q2, and while this isn't a review, I'm going to need a lot more time for that. I at least wanted to give you the unboxing, the assembly, and our first prints. So we're going to take a look at the results of what are the first things out of the printer, what is that initial experience like, and where do we go from here? So let's take a first look at PLA. I started off with PLA because honestly that's the easiest to work with, and I printed in 2 separate halves with very minimal infill to save on filament. You can see I went pretty light on infill there. You can kind of see the striations, and this one's a little heavier on infill, and this one is basic PLA and this is high speed PLA. At the end of the day, when you put these together, well, it's gonna be really hard to tell the difference, especially when there's paint applied. But I do want to point out that these came out very clean. I didn't have to do anything special to the slice. I basically hit auto and sent it off on its way. I've got a little bit of cleanup to work right after there. There's some small bit of stringing here at the edge, and I went really sparse on the infill, but I mean, for an initial print, that's pretty damn great. This other side was basic PLA, non-high speed, and you can see that a little bit inside here. It does get a little bit rougher, but that's only on the inside. The outside is just as clean as the high speed, or pretty close to it. So I'll be able to throw these together pretty easily. The reason I printed it in 2 pieces, even though this would absolutely fit on 1 plate, I want to get inside here because I want to run lights on the inside. If you're familiar with that logo, then you have a pretty good idea of one upcoming project we have. We're going to set that aside. For the next prints, I knew they'd be used as coasters. I wanted them to be a little bit more resilient, so I went with PETG. And you saw that kind of during the assembly video where I was printing these things. Here is the Klingon logo, and you can see that this came out kind of a pinkish color. And we have a little bit of stringing there, some rough edges. Not the cleanest print, not unusable, but I certainly wouldn't give this to anyone. And I certainly wouldn't display it. So I wanted to take another shot at it. I went ahead and ran calibration again, and this came out a lot closer. It's much more clean. The red is the correct color, especially when you see them side by side. It is recognizably red versus Klingon blood pink. So you can still see there are some rough edges here at the kind of line work, kind of the fine detail. For a drink coaster, that's going to hold up really well. I think I could probably dial this in just a little bit more and get this completely clean, but that is PETG, so that's going to hold up. And you don't see a bunch of lines. It is very, very clean. You'll get some close-ups here while I'm talking. The next thing I wanted to print was another thing that's kind of readily available on the internet. All these things I can link to where you can get them, and that is this, the dice giveth, the dice let's try that again. The dice giveth and the dice taketh away. You can see that it just murdered the red again. So I think I've got bad settings on the red. That's less to do with the printer, as you can tell, because everything else is flawless, and it printed exactly the same 3 times. So that tells me that is not about the printer, that is more about dialing in my settings for the red. I don't doubt that I'm carrying a problem from one to the other. So doesn't seem like I can use the same settings on this particular red filament that I can on everything else. There is another option though. Size it up. And that's exactly what I did here. So this came out almost perfect. I've got a little bit of discoloration here, which suggests again maybe that I'm just slightly too high. I did change my settings just a little bit. Still got work to do. You can see there's just a little bit of that color loss throughout there, but I do want to point out that the black lettering on all of these is pretty close to flawless. Even on the back side where you can see that's the printing side, it looks pretty clean. In fact, the red looks a little closer to the red color that I wanted, even though you can see a lot more of the lines, obviously. But on this side, it's completely clean. I'd be comfortable taking a couple of these and laminating these and handing these to somebody as a gift. I probably want to dial this in just a little bit more, but we're talking about, these are the first things that came off the printer. If you are a new printer user, this is your first printer, it's hard to argue with that. I literally loaded the filament in the box, you watched me do it, and hit print. I didn't do anything special to the program, I didn't slice it some special way. It was literally throw it on the plate, make sure that the colors matched, hit go. Slice, send via network, that's it. So if you're looking for an out-of-the-box experience, this, perfect. Especially if you're using PLA, clearly it pushed that right out of the box without a problem. I'll be able to cut into that, load the lights in there that I want to be able to load, and with very minimal cleanup, these, with very little effort, would be very usable as a gift or as something in your own home. So the Qidi Q2 right out of the box and with the box, very impressive. Without the box, I mean, you can't argue with any of the non-color elements here. The precision on all of these is very high, and that's just literally throwing it with the default settings. With a little bit of adjustment, it could be even better. Now, here's the best part. I'm gonna pull up my phone because I wanna make sure that I get this right. For launch, for a very limited time frame, from August 20th, today, to September 2nd, the early bird pricing on the Q2 will be $4.99. Now think about, there's a couple of other printers out there that are at that same exact price. To add the box is $5.99. So for $100 extra, you're getting the entire package that I have shown you throughout this video. For 600 bucks, you could be printing everything you see here. Well, minus filament, that's a whole different level of addiction. But realize that that's going to be a very short window. If you are interested, you need to pull the trigger quickly. Now, that said, I look at the, I'm going to say this correctly, the +4, I kept referring it to as the X4 throughout my video. I don't know why, that's just stuck in my head. I apologize. I look at my experience with the +4 and I look at the 900 hours I've been able to print on that. And I see a lot of the same DNA in the Q2. and I know in my heart that that's going to be a very similar experience based off of what I see here. Can I dial in some stuff? You bet. That's any 3D printer. I don't have a 3D printer that I have not had to dial at least a little bit to get it to print perfectly. But out of the box experience, pretty damn close. And the stuff that I do need to fix, all well within reason for post-processing work that you'd expect on any print. So again, $600 right out of the gate, hard to beat it. Let me know in the comments, do you intend to pick one up? Are you gonna grab it at that price? If so, let me know. I'm Ron Burke, editor-in-chief for Gamingtrend.com. Thanks for joining me on this print, and thank you for joining me on such a long video. Stay safe, look for our full review very soon, and we'll see you again real soon.